So, hello, welcome, namaste, good afternoon. I bow in reverence and gratitude to those of you joining me in the room, to those of you joining me on Zoom, and to those of you listening to the recording afterward. This is a little Dharma talk that I like to call Living from the Heart, all about this 18-inch spiritual journey, which can sometimes take many lifetimes, simply to travel from the head to the heart. I'd like to begin with a poem as a lead into this week's topic, and we'll close out with a short meditation and have some time at the end for question and answer. And this poem comes from the Sutta Nipata. It's known as the Discourse on Goodwill. Perhaps some of these phrases might seem familiar to you. May all beings be filled with joy and peace. May all beings everywhere, the strong and the weak, the great and the small, the mean and the powerful, the short and the long, the subtle and the gross. May all beings everywhere, seen and unseen, dwelling far off or nearby, being or waiting to become, may all be filled with lasting joy. Let no one deceive another. Let no one anywhere despise another. Let no one out of anger or resentment wish suffering on anyone at all. Just as a mother with her own life protects her child, her only child, from harm, so within yourself let grow a boundless love for all creatures. Let your love flow outward through the universe, to its height, its depth, its broad extent, a limitless love without hatred or enmity. Then, as you stand or walk, sit or lie down, as long as you are awake, strive for this with a one-pointed mind, and your life will bring heaven to earth. Sutta Nipata is a Theravadan Buddhist text. And the topic I wanted to talk about today is what I like to call the universal evolution of love. And it's something I think a lot about. Often before I begin teaching a yoga class, I will ask people if they have any requests. Do you want to work on the hips? Do you want to work on the shoulders? And very often people ask for heart openers. And in my many years of teaching, not a single person has asked for a heart closer. It's never been a request that people have had. So it seems almost universal that within each and every one of us, within every single human being, there is a yearning for love, a longing for love, a desire for the heart to open. It's almost as if this heart of ours longs to be open. And explicitly or implicitly, we all feel this. We all feel this desire for a boundless and open heart. And the argument that I'd like to make today is that this is the direction the whole universe is taking, to an open and boundless love, to greater and greater love, of which you, right here, right now, are simply the most recent manifestation of this process. And this longing, this deep longing for love, for boundless love, to increase the love that we have inside of ourselves, has been there ever since the beginning of the universe. There's an incredible quote by Henry David Thoreau, which goes, "Though I do not believe that a plant will spring up where no seed has been, I have great faith in a seed. Convince me that you have a seed there, and I am prepared to expect wonders." So we think about, in this universe, can something arise from nothing? Can a tree arise from which no seed is planted? And this is something that we encourage practitioners as they come to a meditative practice, is to think of meditation as what we call bhavana, or bhav. Bhav means coming to be. And it's also can be translated as a cultivation. So every time we sit on our meditation cushion, every time we sit on our yoga mat, first we plant that seed. You might call the seed the sankalpa. You might call it your intention. You might call it an aspiration. We are cultivating the garden of our own heart and mind every time we sit down, and we plant those seeds of love, compassion, kindness, understanding, and forgiveness. And we see our practice as one of watering those seeds. And if we ask this fundamental question, do we live in a conscious universe? Do we live in an intelligent universe? I would say yes. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. Otherwise, none of this would have been possible. There is a quote, "Of course, the universe approves of you. That's why you are here." And Hafiz wrote this: "How did the rose ever open its heart and give to this world all of its beauty? It felt the encouragement of light against its being. Otherwise, we all remain too frightened." I love that line. It felt the encouragement of light against its being, which implies we are being encouraged to open, encouraged to blossom, just as the seed is being encouraged to grow, to find the fullest manifestation or expression of its being. We too are encouraged to find a boundless, timeless, changeless love. And as intelligent beings and as conscious beings, we're almost told through our sciences that this is largely an aberration, that you give enough matter and energy some time, and eventually it will evolve into some kind of intelligence. But if we think about how can a tree be born when no seed is planted, we have to understand that as soon as this universe came into being, which could have been 14 billion years ago, when there was what scientists call a Big Bang, all of the conditions for your own existence and for this life were there. And all the conditions for consciousness to arise and intelligence to arise were there. Another way to think about it is imagine you're an alien species and 10 million years ago, you came to planet Earth and all you saw were plants and animals. And you concluded that this is not an intelligent planet. And then suddenly you came back to modern times and you see all these people on this planet. Well, it must have occurred to you that this is an Earth, this is a planet that has the conditions for intelligence and consciousness. Not too dissimilar as if you were to come across a tree, and in the springtime, this tree has yet to bear fruit, and you have yet to conclude what type of tree that it is. But if you come back in the fall and you see that the tree has sprung and given birth to apples, you have to come to the conclusion that, of course, this was an apple tree. That when the seed that became that tree was planted, it had encoded within it all of the information in order to manifest the tree. So too, in this universe, as soon as this universe came into being, it had all the causes and conditions for consciousness and intelligence. And just as the apple tree apples, we are currently living in a universe that is peopling all over. And this is an important model of the universe to understand, this model of the tree, that essentially we are one leaf on this tree connected to all of life. And this is very different than the illusion of separation that many of ourselves find ourselves in. When we think of yoga as connection, as unity, as a linking together, as a yoking together, and why it's so popular in today's world, we have to recognize that many people feel a fundamental sense of disconnection and isolation from themselves, from the others, and from this world. And we don't feel ourselves to be a simple expression of the universe connected to all things. We don't feel ourselves to be a leaf on the tree. We almost feel to be strangers in a strange land, like we are some bird that has flown off from some other universe to land on this tree, to take a look around and wondering how this universe came to be. So we have to understand that we are a leaf on this tree, a leaf on this universe manifesting itself. And we are the culmination of the billions of years of evolution of matter and energy that this tree had encoded in it since the beginning. So we are part of this dance. And this can be quite relieving to many of us to know that we are an extraordinary phenomena of the universe, just like the clouds, just like the tree, just like the leaves on the tree. And Alan Watts put it this way: if you see yourself in the correct way, you are all as much extraordinary phenomena of nature as trees, clouds, the patterns in running water, the flickering of fire, the arrangement of the stars, and the form of a galaxy. You are all just like that, and there is nothing wrong with you at all. So it is interesting when you do talk to a scientist about how life on this planet came to be. They'll probably explain that, well, there are many planets in this universe, many galaxies in this universe, constantly interchanging and exchanging matter and energy with each other. And out of the millions upon billions upon trillions of planets in this universe, one was lucky enough to evolve the right conditions for life to form and for us to form. And we can also take this higher order perspective on this idea and say that essentially none of us would exist if the entire universe didn't exist. That in order for life to exist on this planet, we also need an infinite universe constantly expanding. We could also flip it around and say the universe wouldn't exist if we didn't exist. So it's taken quite some time for planets to form and for this Earth to form. And in this evolution of life on this planet, in this evolution of, we might say, love and consciousness and sentience, we see this evolution in ourselves. And you might even know of what is known as the triune model of the brain, the three-part model of the brain. It's a way of understanding ourselves and how we evolved to be the people that we are today. So you've probably heard of the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, and the neo-mammalian brain. And it's not like if you were to open up a skull and look in someone's brain, you're going to see these three layers. It's a model that can be helpful to understand. Usually the reptilian brain is localized somewhere in the realm of the brain stem. The mammalian brain is in the limbic system. And then the neo-mammalian brain is in the higher cortical functionings of the mind. And we have all of these layers in our own mind. We also have a more reptilian brain. So about 300 million years ago, when reptiles evolved to walk on this planet, they were primarily focused on one thing: their own survival. So our own reptilian brain is also the source of our own sympathetic nervous system response, our own flight, fright, freeze response. That part of us that is worried about its own survival. It is solitary. It is constantly scanning the environment for threats to our own survival. And if it does detect threats, it will kick that flight, fright, freeze system into high gear. And that was about 300 million years ago with our cold-blooded reptilian ancestors. And it would take another 100 million years, about 200 million years ago, for our first mammalian ancestors to evolve. And this is when the limbic system, our emotional processing system, began to come on board. And when you look at the differences between reptilian behavior and mammalian behavior, you see a number of novel new ways of interacting with one another. With mammals, almost all mammals, especially if you have dogs and cats, what do you see? You see play. You see interactions. You see mothers and fathers, depending on the species, taking care of their own children. Unlike many reptile species, like a turtle that can just lay 100 eggs on the beach and then go back into the ocean, and by and large, many of these species have evolved to crack out of their eggs and survive on their own. Mammalian species evolved to take care of one another, to generate familial bonds. And a huge reason for that is because as mammals, we're able to have less offspring per lifetime. Reptiles can have 100 eggs, 1,000 eggs if you're a fish in the sea. By and large, we are fairly limited in how many kids we can have in a lifetime. So the involvement that we have with our kids is much longer than other species on this planet. So we've evolved a number of caretaking desires. We love our children. We think babies are cute. This is the mammalian brain that has evolved us to love and care for one another. So we've shifted from the reptilian flight, fight, freeze, I'm only cared about my own needs and my own survival, to the familial bonds. I'm going to care about people that I consider to be my own genetic lineage. And then came the neo-mammalian brain, which is the social brain, which was the expansion beyond just familial bonds and taking care of our own kids to being part of a tribe. And we human beings did evolve to live in tribes of around 100 to 120 people. And we have social brains that are wired to connect, wired to monitor the health or sickness of social relationships. So deeply rooted in our brain is a desire to belong. The pain of isolation and rejection is very real pain because it means it's a threat to our own survival. So, as Luis Cozzolino writes in The Neuroscience of Human Relationships, our species did not evolve from survival of the fittest, but survival of the most nurtured. We've moved away from brawn to existing in social groups that helped each other. And in such a way, we become the most cooperative species on the planet. All this is to say that we've undergone this evolution of only caring about ourselves, to only caring about our family, to caring about a larger social group. And this is where our mind is at currently. And we can see how limited that can be in our current societal structure. We have an in group and we have an out group. And we can see all the violence and destruction that has been done in this world through different groups in power that have decided this is going to be our in group and this is what we're going to do to the out group, whether it's violence or repression or genocide. So we have to evolve beyond in group and out group, beyond our limited structures of our brains to only handle 100, 120 social relationships, to encompass a love for all beings everywhere. So along with our neocortical functioning, this is where we have our most positive emotions, our emotions of joy and awe and wonder and happiness. Okay, the salamander that sat in the rock and looked at the sky and thought, what a beautiful day it was, and then just sat there in awe, got snatched pretty quickly up by the eagle. Wasn't in our evolutionary history to just sit and be in peace for long periods of time. But us, the human species, we do have this capacity. We do have the unique capacity to choose our own destiny and to expand our love to encompass more and more people. So both science and spirit agree that this essentially is where we are headed. We could take Albert Einstein, for example, who says, a human being is part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts, and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole nature in its beauty. Nobody is able to achieve this completely, but the striving for such achievement is in itself a part of the liberation and a foundation for our inner security. And we have Sadhguru, who says this. Spiritual evolution is the great possibility available only to humanity. The human being has come with the possibility of being a completely conscious being rather than a compulsive one. We can choose to be whichever way we want, a tiger or a deer, a divinity or a demon. We have no fixed nature. Unfortunately, we suffer this fluidity, this phenomenal gift of freedom. So here we see how this evolution brings us to two understandings. One, we are caught up in what Einstein says an optical illusion of consciousness. We think ourselves to be separate, isolated, individual entities caught up in an alien universe, almost an ego encapsulated in a bag of skin, caught up as a stranger in a strange land. And part of our practice is to dispel this illusion of separation and to feel a connection with all things, to see ourselves as a leaf united to all things in this universe. And in so doing, we expand our circle of love and compassion and kindness to be for all sentient beings in this life. And this is the mode, this is the shift, this is the promise of our spiritual practice, that there is a general mode and way of being in this world, and we can switch to a different mode, a different way of being, a different way of understanding. We can point to it towards metaphor, such as we can awake from the dream to experience reality as it is, and that is just what Buddha means. It means awakened one. The Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, was just one human being that was able to become awake. The point is that most human beings are caught up in this dream. This illusion of separation is part of the dream, and part of our spiritual practice is to wake up from this dream. And this to me is what the resurrection means. That we all have this capacity to be reborn, to be resurrected, which is just another metaphor to describe this shift in being and shift of consciousness. So Thomas Merton put it this way: the true Christian rebirth is a renewed transformation, a Passover in which man is progressively liberated from selfishness and not only grows in love, but in some sense becomes love. The perfection of the new birth is reached where there is no more selfishness. There is only love. There is no more ego self. There is only the spirit that acts in pure love. Thomas Merton, one of my favorite Christian mystics, but you find this truth and this idea from all the mystics throughout history. As it kind of goes, the mystic almost slips into a way of consciousness that is exactly what it is that we are describing. The mystic, in their own mystical awakening, awakens to this true nature of reality, where we find a sense of belonging. They know that we are all holy, WHOLY. We are part of this whole universe. So Rumi put it this way: I died as a mineral and became a plant. I died as a plant and rose to an animal. I died as an animal and I was human. Why should I fear? When was I less by dying? Yet once more I shall die human, to soar with angels blessed above. And when I sacrifice my angel soul, I shall become what no mind ever conceived. As a human, I will die once more. Reborn, I will be with the angels soaring. And when I let my angel body go, I shall be more than the mortal mind can know. I died as a mineral and became a plant. I died as a plant and became an animal. I died as an animal and became a human. What should I fear? What do I have to lose by dying? We see this identification with this tree of life, that we are this continuation of all of life. And this is the promise of our spiritual practice, to drop out of a different way of thinking. So Eckhart Tolle defined spirituality as discovering a dimension within yourself that is, we can say, a deeper or higher dimension than the continuous movement of thinking. So we are caught up in our thinking mind, our endlessly ruminative mind, and we are here to shift out of that mode to discover a new dimension within ourselves. You could call that dimension Buddha nature, Christ consciousness, sentience. You could call it nothing at all, because all words are, of course, just fingers pointing at the moon. You could also call it the presence of God. So Thomas Keating put it this way: to live in the presence of God on a continuous basis can become a kind of fourth dimension to our three-dimensional world, forming an invisible but real background to everything that we do or that happens in our lives. I'll give another one by Rumi. Be empty of worrying. Think of who created thought. Why do you stay in prison when the door is so wide open? Move outside the tangle of fear thinking. Live in silence. Flow down and down in always widening rings of being. So from a yogic perspective, whenever you hear this word prison, we have to think of the prison of the ego self, the prison of what we call I, me, and mine. We are here to break out of that prison of I, me, and mine that keeps us separated, that keeps us isolated, that essentially keeps us in bondage, to attain liberation. On the yogic path, liberation, awakening, knowing who you are, vipassana, or insight, these are all synonyms for dropping into this different mode of being and this different way of being that is available to all of us all the time. So sometimes I imagine like a 15th century medieval peasant who lives in their hut with a mud floor and a thatched roof house. And they sleep with their cow to keep it nice and warm. And you can imagine the smells of the animals and the dirt and the hut. And they travel down the road and they go into the city and they enter into the Sistine Chapel. And they experience this joy and awe and wonder and gratitude and appreciation for life as they finally discover this fourth dimension, this other way of being. And this is the promise of our spiritual practice. Some of us, we might in the morning wake up in a bad mood. I know this might be hard to imagine. But do you ever wake up in a bad mood and then suddenly the world just stinks, right? Even in AA, they call it stinking thinking. The world just stinks. And we realize we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. If we are in a gray mood, the world seems pretty gray. Our alarm goes off and we hate the sound of the alarm. We drive into work and we hate the traffic. We go into our job and we hate the job and the environment and our lights and our coworkers. Suddenly everything in this life is getting on our nerves. This is the general mode we find ourselves in. This is one mode of thinking. And our spiritual practice offers a way out of that mode, out of that dimension. So imagine instead, rather than immediately beginning your day, sitting down on your meditation cushion, taking out some mala beads and chanting, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, again and again and again. This is a way to drop out of that stinking thinking. The jewel in the heart of the lotus, Om Mani Padme Hum, imagining this endlessly blossoming and blooming lotus flower within you. Suddenly a new dimension and way of being naturally arises. When you do this, you'll find the mind will protest. The mind will say, what are you doing? This is so repetitive. This is not new. I need novelty. Don't you need to check your email? Don't you need to check what's in the fridge? Don't you need to do this? This is a way of dropping out of that continuous moment of thinking to find a new dimension to our being. So when we think about our capacity as a human being, this is part of our practice too, finding that joy, finding that wonder, finding that gratitude for all of life. There's a story of a Japanese astronaut who came back to Earth after a big mission. And a reporter asked this astronaut by the name of Akiyama, did you have any kind of religious experience in space? Have you returned with any philosophical impressions? To which he replied, I was so preoccupied with my affairs on Earth that I experienced absolutely nothing different on venturing into space. And this is what happens. We get preoccupied. We aren't present to the joy, the awe, and the wonder that is all around us. With our weapons of mass distraction, we don't even savor things anymore. So, as we learn about our evolutionary history, as we learn about the natural predispositions of the mind, we should also recognize that our mind essentially is Teflon for the good things in our life and Velcro for the bad. We have a strong negativity bias that's going to focus on what's wrong rather than what's right. So, part of our practice is shifting out of that mode, cultivating gratitude and appreciation for what is, and recognizing that we don't even savor things anymore. And the science shows, and the neuroscience shows, that all you need to create that samskara, what we call it, the latent impression of the mind, to create that imprint of appreciation in the mind, all you need is 50 to 30 seconds of savoring, of being present with where you are and enjoying what you have and what you are doing, enjoying the breath, enjoying the blue skies, enjoying the flowers, enjoying whatever it is that you are eating or drinking. This is part of our process of awakening. This is part of our spiritual path. Learning to slow down, learning to appreciate the good things in our life. So Thich Nhat Hanh says that when we wake up in the morning, we can smile because every day we have 24 brand new hours ahead of us. And we can vow to live fully in this moment, and we can vow to see this world through the eyes of compassion, another capacity within ourselves that we can cultivate. So we mentioned chanting, and chanting is another what we call anti-rumination strategy. And psychologists have found the more anti-rumination strategies that you have, the more opportunities and strategies that you have to drop out of stinking thinking, to drop out of the same habitual patterns of the mind, the more happy you will be. Because we have to drop out of that negativity bias and spend intentional time cultivating the more positive aspects of our being. So this is what chanting is designed to do, to cultivate that presence and attention and to grow, to above, to cultivate those positive qualities within ourselves. And this is important. This is our antidotes, we like to call them. If you are cold, for example, are you going to seek more cold? No, in order to cure your cold, you need warmth. So, in order to cure the impurities, we call them, of hatred, ill will, jealousy, and envy, we need the antidotes of love, kindness, and compassion. So, in the Dhammapada, it says this: transform anger with kindness and evil with good, meanness with generosity, and deceit with integrity. I think that could be enough for today. Let's return to a straight spine, to relaxed shoulders. Turning our attention inward. Closing the eyes might help, but so might keeping them slightly open. And if there's any mantra that you resonate with, Spend a few moments with that mantra. Could be Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Namah Shivaya. Could be breathing in, finding peace, breathing out, finding calm. And then tap into the heart space. Tap into this yearning, this desire to love and be loved. And recognize every human being has this same desire to love and to be loved, to be seen and accepted, to belong. And through seeing others as ourselves and ourselves in others, we begin to widen our circle of compassion beyond simply caring for our own needs. And beginning to open the heart to a love and compassion for all beings. And we express this love and compassion for all beings with simple phrases to water those seeds of loving kindness and compassion. May all beings be filled with joy and peace. May all beings everywhere, seen and unseen, dwelling far off or nearby, being or waiting to become, may all be filled with lasting joy. Within yourself, let grow a boundless love for all creatures. Let your love flow outward through the universe, to its height, its depth, its broad extent, a limitless love without hatred or enmity. So that when we step off our cushions, as we stand, as we walk, as long as we are awake, striving for this one appointed mind, our life will bring heaven to earth. And that burning diamond of love and light in me honors that burning and turning diamond of love and light in you, that spark of the divine within each and every one of us. Namaste.